Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Sisterly. You're here with your co hosts, Olivia and Rebecca. I'm a little hoarse today, so sorry about that. Not my best podcasting voice, or maybe it is. Maybe I sound a little dangerous,
Raspy, like Demi Moore.
like Phoebe on Friends when she gets a
Yeah,
cold.
when she gets her sexy colds.
Yeah. I went on a little girls trip with some of my gals this weekend, and I don't remember screaming that much, but maybe I did because I'm very raspy. I also saw Harry Styles in concert last Thursday, so I was definitely screaming a lot at that point in time. So that could be what was also.
Was that epic?
It was pretty epic. I mean, he was just like put on a really good show, and he was also somehow so like personable, and it seemed casual, which feels weird when you're seeing like a celebrity perform to thousands of people. But he would like have little announcements and he would like turn the lights on almost, where he was like, okay, like not all the way, but he was like,
Yeah, so you could see the people in the crowd. I've seen on
yeah,
TikTok, for some reason, his stuff comes up a lot in my feed, and
he's
I'm not
very
mad about
popular on
it.
TikTok.
But it seems like at his concerts, he talks a lot, like, to the fans and, like, looks at people's
He
signs and
does.
stuff and, like, interacts. I think that's nice. I like that.
At the end of the night, he gives like a bunch of thank yous, and he literally pointed out this like mom and grandma and was like, the two of you have been the best. Like you've had the most fun the whole night. Like it was so cute.
So cute.
So yeah, great show, great outfit. Also, everyone who attended the concert was stylish as hell.
Yeah.
Lots of good outfits, lots of very Harry Styles inspired outfits. So that was the time. I got a t-shirt. It was great.
Love that. Tangentially related to Harry Styles, but not quite anymore, is Taylor Swift, whose Red album, Taylor's version, dropped this past week.
Yeah, which was amazing. I
Twas.
haven't been able to fully process yet. Like I'm still processing.
I know. It's so many songs. I like sat down and I was like, wow, it's like almost it's like 2.5 hours long. You
It
can't just kind
is.
of like sit and listen to it quick. Like you would really need
No.
to take some time and sit and listen to it. Obviously, day one, I listened to the All Too Well 10-minute version like 3 times in a row. Pretty great. And then was very excited to watch the short film with Dylan O'Brien and Sadie Sink. Amazing.
Yeah, I loved that. I luckily, well, I guess not so luckily, but I was in the car for many hours this weekend and had the opportunity to like fully listen to the album all the way through, um, which was super exciting just because I love Red. It's a great album.
Yeah,
Um,
I love that whole album.
there are also a couple songs I honestly forgot were on Red.
Yep. I
So,
forgot how much I like seriously. I really like the song Holy Ground. It
so
really
good.
makes me want to dance.
Hmm.
And I forgot that I liked it so
I
much.
also love Begin Again. I always forget how much I love a Begin Again.
Oh yeah, that is a really good
It's a
one.
good one.
It was so crazy to listen to All Too Well and like, you're singing along because you know it. And then all of a sudden
Hmm.
it's like she interrupts me with like new words and I'm like,
Yeah.
"Oh, I didn't know that." Okay, well, what's this? It was weird to just like hear a song that you know so well and then have it just like burst in with new stuff. And I was like, "Ooh, plot twist."
Yeah, I
Enjoyed.
was I was such a fan. I love the new songs too, or like the ones that were from the vault. I also didn't realize two of the songs are ones that she wrote for other artists that I didn't know. Like the song
Yeah.
Babe was Sugarland sang that song, sings that song.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
And I
yeah.
remember she was featured on it when it came out years ago, but I didn't know that she wrote it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So that
I
was
didn't
cool
I
too.
didn't realize that until after the fact either. I still haven't seen the music video for I Bet You Think About Me. I wanna see that.
I watched it today. It was good. I mean, it was not as good as All Too Well because that
Yeah.
was,
How could it be? Dylan O'Brien wasn't in it, so
yeah, that was so good. Ugh. But anywho, we're still processing that. But Taylor Swift is just the gift that keeps on giving. So
I know. I feel like she can be polarizing for some people, but I just am such a big fan of
I just love
her
her. I really do.
songwriting abilities. Like, I just feel like she's kind of unparalleled in like the industry for just like being able to write hit after hit after hit. And like not just songs that are like, oh, these sell well, but are just like lyrically so good. I
Yep.
often feel like sometimes that the lead single she actually puts out I like the least, and
Yeah,
then it's
yeah,
like
yeah.
the song like Me, sorry, not to hate, but like not her best,
Yeah.
but
What was
like
going
then
on there? I don't know.
the rest of it so good.
Yeah.
So, I don't know.
I agree, 'cause when I was listening to Red this weekend, I actually skipped over, like, the most popular ones. Like, "We
Yeah.
Are Never Ever Getting Back Together." Like, I've
Mhm.
heard that a million times, I kinda just, like, skipped it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um,
There's some good gems on there.
so many. But anywho, on the topic of Taylor Swift, because the thing she writes about the most is falling in love and heartbreak. Today, we are starting with just the falling in love part, and we're going to be talking about that, not in relation to Taylor Swift, but just falling in love in general, our experiences with it. Um, do we believe in love at first sight? Do we believe in soulmates? All that good stuff. So I'm excited to talk about that today.
Yeah, falling in love or talking about how you know when you're in love is not something that I've sort of like talked about or processed, I feel like out loud that much. It's like sort of an internal process that you think about like
Yeah.
what am I feeling? How do I know what I'm feeling? But I feel like it's fun to kind of talk about it and see like how you and I might have felt similarly or differently. And I feel like a younger me before I had been in love or when I had feelings and I was trying to figure out if it was like love would have been interested to know what somebody else's take on that was.
Yeah, no, I think it'll be interesting to see how we differ a little bit. I think what's so hard about falling in love or knowing that you're in love is that people don't really express exactly what you feel, and everyone feels so differently that it's hard to know. It's hard to be able to recognize the signs. You're kind of like,
Mhm.
I think this is love,
Yeah.
but I'm not 100% sure, especially if it's your first time falling in love. You're kind of like, what is this feeling?
Right. What is this feeling? So sudden and new.
Yep.
Super wicked.
I also think too, when you fall in love feels very different than when you're in love, like, way later on, if
Yeah,
that
yeah.
makes sense. Like,
Yeah, the falling is different than the just, like, being in love.
yeah, and you know what's so interesting? Whenever I think of falling in love, I just think of, like, The Bachelor and The Bachelorette because all they ever like, the first thing they say is, like, "I think I'm falling in love with you," rather than just saying, "I'm in love with you," which is so interesting because you never say that in real life. Like, you
Yeah.
feel the act of falling in love, but you don't tell people, "I
Right, right,
think I'm
right.
falling in love," because in fairness, like, you're kind of starting to fall in love from, like, the moment you meet the person that you're gonna fall like, that you end up falling in love with,
Right,
right?
right.
Like,
There's,
that
like,
whole timeline is the
something.
falling in love part, so you don't need to necessarily vocalize that. It's
Yep,
just happening, and then you
yep.
say the "I'm in love" part.
No, that's so true. They say it so often on The Bachelor and Bachelorette, and yeah, I don't I don't know anyone who's said that besides just saying, "I love you."
It makes me so irritated, like, every time this happens, I'm like, "No one cares about this, okay? I don't care that you're falling in love, I just wanna know when you're in love, like, I'm tired of you making this giant, big announcement over nothing." Anyhow,
Yeah. Yeah.
I can go on forever about that, but no one wants that, so, um, it's interesting though when I think about it. It was a while ago that I had the first feelings of love for my current boyfriend because we've been dating for like 5.5 years. So it's been a minute. Um, but I remember I just kept like asking myself in my head, like, am I in love? Like, am I falling in love? Is that what's happening? Like, do I love him? I think I love him.
Yep.
I don't know. Like, is that what this is? And it's hard to remember exactly what the feeling was, but I think it was like a combo of butterflies, but also feeling really at ease at the same time, if
Mhm.
that makes sense. Just like really comfortable.
Yeah, I totally agree with the comfortable thing. I feel like that was one of the things that stood out the most for me when I started dating Mike is just how comfortable around him I felt. Like I never wanted him to leave. I was never like embarrassed or just like over analyzing everything. Like I used to get so nervous before dates, just like highly anxious. I'd be like counting down till my day was over with people because I was just like, this is so stressful. And that just never happened with him. I just felt so comfortable and so like
Cozy.
safe, yeah, and cozy that I was just like, okay, this is like different. I have never felt this before because I just feel so good where I am and yeah, like at home.
And I think if it's different for everyone. I mean, I think you see a lot of times in like the movies or and social media more of this like passionate, like angry almost kind of love or
Right, the, like,
like
tension, like
tumultuous. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, if that makes sense, but that's definitely not how it was for me at least. Like Jack and I didn't even have a fight until like a year into dating, which in fairness, I was like we did long distance for a while, so maybe there were just like less opportunities for us to be fighting, but it just felt very comfortable, very easy, very like you said, I never want us to stop hanging out. Like I just want to be around you
Mhm.
all the time. Like your heart kind of hurts when you're apart. Like you can kind of feel it, which might sound a little
Yeah.
cheesy,
You
but like you
literally
can
get, like, just sad when they have to
yeah.
go, and it was I'd be like, "What is wrong with me? Like, he has to go home." Like, what do I expect from him? But I was just, like, sad every time he had to go.
But I think also what's the flip side of falling in love is that it can also feel very stressful. At least it
Yep.
felt very stressful for me because I don't know why, but like I had kind of decided in my head that like maybe love just wasn't for me. And which sounds
Yeah.
so silly because Jack and I started dating when I was 19. Like it wasn't like I don't know, like that's very young to fall in love and like to have a boyfriend, at least in my opinion.
Yeah.
Um So it was definitely very stressful, this kind of feeling of just like, this isn't what I expected. And like, I don't know if I'm ready for that kind of feeling. Like, it's just a lot to handle. And I think also, too, it's like the second you care about someone so much is also when it becomes very apparent that you have a lot to lose.
Yep.
And so, or you could get hurt, which is also a very scary feeling. Sometimes it's just easier to prevent that by staying a little bit detached from people. Um, and it's hard because sometimes when you fall in love, it just happens despite you trying to keep people at an arm's length so that you're safe, you know?
Yeah. I feel like in the beginning of a relationship, in addition to the, feeling safe and feeling comfortable, can also be these feelings of insecurity, because it's new and you're not totally sure where the other person stands yet. Because even if you're comfortable, you're probably not vocalizing all the time exactly how you feel about each other because you're just sort of getting to know each other and like having experiences together and seeing how that goes. And you can have all these feelings of like, well, do they feel the same way that I do? Like, are they thinking about me as much as I'm thinking about them? Like, are they enjoying us, hanging out together as much as I am? And I feel like, at some point you do sort of like start vocalizing that more and more, but there's like this excitement, but also these nerves when you're not totally sure how the other person feels about you.
Totally. I mean, it's just so hard to be vulnerable like that, especially when you start having feelings or getting attached in any way. It's like, then I think there's almost this period of like, it starts out casual, then it almost like gets worse because you're starting to have feelings. And then it gets a lot better when you feel more comfortable with that person and you know you're on the same page, if that makes
Mhm.
sense. There's almost like this like mid craziness of like,
Yeah.
am I the only one who's feeling this? You know, is this going to end soon? You know, I'm going to be so bummed, like all of that. I remember when Jack and I started dating, it was at the end of my sophomore year of college, and in the fall, I was going abroad. And the logical decision might have been to not continue dating because we had only been seeing each other for like 3 weeks before we were going to be apart for like 6+ months. But I really liked him. And I never really liked someone like that before. No one had ever treated me that well before. Um, and I feel like even some of my friends were like, I wouldn't get into that right now. Like, you know, and I remember just being like, how do I bring this up with him? And also like there was such a timeline of like I'm flying back to the East Coast in like 7 days. Like, are we gonna have this conversation or are we not gonna have this
Yep.
conversation? And it's just so scary to just like put out those feelers of like, well, how are you feeling? Like, do you want to keep
Right,
talking? Do
right.
you not want to keep talking?
So, how do you feel about this situation?
I remember I asked something like, "Do you wanna date?" And he was like, "Do you wanna date?" I'm like, "First of all, how dare you? How dare you throw that back on me?" But
Like,
it's
"I
just
asked you first."
yeah, it's just like it almost feels like you're like on a stage all of a sudden. There's like a million people watching you and you're just like, "Oh god, like what do I say to make this keep going and not embarrass myself or get hurt or anything like that?" And then I think like it's interesting that people call it falling in love, but I guess it does kind of feel like that because it feels a little bit like you're either like wandering aimlessly or like falling into the unknown of just kind
Yeah,
of
doing a
like
bit of a trust fall.
totally. And either it goes well and that you both feel the same way, or it goes very poorly and that someone ends up getting hurt. But um, yeah, it's kind of a very exciting but also very scary feeling.
Yeah, I feel like you're right, there's kind of phases. It's like the beginning is like, "Oh, this is super fun." It's, like, still kinda casual, getting to know someone, like, this is a good time. And then it's like, "Ooh, catching feelings." Like, "This feels good, but also now I'm stressed." And then it's like, "How does the other person feel? Where's their head at? Like, are we on the same page?" Which inevitably leads to some sort of, "What are we? How are we feeling? Where is this going? Are we on the same page?" type of discussion. And then once that's had, if you are on the same page, then it's like, "Oh, this is great." And like it's like all of the good stuff without some of the insecurity of not knowing where the other person stands.
Totally. And I think it's interesting too, we're talking about how we fell in love. And I know when Jack told me he loved me first, there was no way in hell I was saying it first. No way. Um, which I get isn't super fair, but that's just where my head was at. Um, but he said that he loved me first and I said it back, which is it's very nice when that happens at the same time, but I feel like I have a lot of thoughts and opinions on when people don't say I love you at the same time because I think there's this like stigma that it's really embarrassing if someone says they love you or you say you love someone and they don't say it back right away.
Mm,
I remember this specifically in Gilmore Girls because I feel like this is the first time I ever saw it happen where there are two like main characters, Rory and Dean, and Dean tells Rory he loves her, and she's like well, she was 16, and she kind of froze and just didn't say anything. I think she said, "Thank you."
yeah, I
She
think
didn't
she did.
say
Also,
anything
that
back.
happens in the OC the exact same way with Marissa and Ryan.
It's like, I say I love you, and you don't say anything back, and I think that happens a lot in the context of teenagers, like, which makes less sense. There's, like, a lot going on in your brain, and you don't know what you're feeling, but I think it can happen in adulthood too, and I think that I mean, it's obviously hard in the moment it feels like a rejection. It feels like someone saying they don't love you, which I don't think is exactly what they're saying. I think it's just that they don't know if what they're feeling is love yet.
Yeah.
And I think it's just interesting that we don't give people like the time to kind of figure that out. It's like you either feel it when I feel it or we're done.
Yeah, I think that's a lot of pressure. I do understand that. I feel like if I had said that to Mike and he hadn't said it back, I would have felt like, "Oh no." Like I would have felt sad. But on the other hand, I wouldn't want to hear it unless I knew it was like genuine and true. Like I would want to make sure that the other person really meant it when they said it, not that they felt like they had to say it or just match my level. So I feel like making sure that it's the right time for someone is definitely more important. And I feel like for Mike and I, there was like a certain point where I could just like tell that I loved him because it just almost kept like slipping out of my mouth. Like it's like I just wanted to say it and like what if we were saying goodbye or something, like it felt just so natural that I should also be like I love you or love you or something like that. And I was actively restraining myself from saying it. And I would just like keep thinking it and then be like, no, 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 like you can't just say that right now. So I would just like keep it to myself. I remember at one point we like had a chat about sort of feelings and like, how are we feeling about things and, all that. And he was like, "Are you asking about the L word?" And
Oh my god.
I was like, "No, no, not like specifically that. Like, I'm not asking you to tell me that right now. I'm just trying to figure out, like, do we think that this is like kind of going the same direction? Like, how do we feel about it?" We chatted and like agreed that yes, we did, but it seemed pretty clear to me in that moment that like he was nervous about saying that was just trying to make sure that he, like really felt that and knew it before he would say it. And this is before I was having the whole like almost bursting to say it. Um, and so I feel like I maybe knew, I don't know if this is true, but I feel like I maybe knew before he did, but I just like made the choice to sort of wait until I knew he was also ready to say it. And so then he said it first, and I was like, "Yep, love you too."
Yeah, I feel like Jack told me that he loved me pretty early on in our relationship. I mean, I think we had only been dating about 6 weeks or so when he said that to me, and I felt it too, but it's just very scary because I was like, "Whoa, we are 6 weeks in, like, how do I know how I feel?" I also had never been in love before. I mean,
Right.
I don't know. I had some high school crushes that in my mind I really loved, but they didn't love me back, so I think it's a little different.
Mhm.
Um, they didn't know that they probably didn't know that I love them, I'm not good at hiding things. But they they didn't acknowledge me, so it was just a different kind of love. But, uh, yeah, I think it's just, like, a very overwhelming feeling all of a sudden. Um, and I also just, like one of the things we wanted to talk about was the idea of love at first sight, and, like, when I first met Jack, I just didn't think that that's where it was going, like, not in a bad way, I just, like, didn't think we were when I met him, like, "Oh, we're gonna fall in love and be
Right,
together for
right.
years." Like, that's just not what I thought was gonna happen. So when all of a sudden it was like, "Whoa, we're going down the path," I was like, "Whoa, I did not expect this, like, this is not what I prepped for," like, I just, you feel a little out of control almost, which is
Yeah,
a scary feeling for me at least, like, I like being in control of things. Um, so it's hard to just kind of pause and let your emotions guide you in that situation and not I like to think very like, logically, I guess, or, like, logistically, I often say, and it's hard that you can't, like, plan every moment of falling in love out, like, it just kind of happens or it doesn't, and it's hard
yeah,
to let go.
yeah, it can be very unexpected, and I really like that John Green quote that's from The Fault in Our Stars, where it's like, "I fell in love the way you fall asleep, slowly and then all at once."
Mhm.
And I feel like that's very true. It's like a slow sort of build. A lot of times it's like, oh, these like slow things, you're feeling comfortable, you're feeling safe, like you're feeling happy. And then sort of kind of all at once you realize like, wow, like I'm sort of like overwhelmed by it. Like I really like for me, I felt like all of a sudden I was just like my thoughts were like consumed and like by him or by my feelings about him like all the time, like in the beginning when that's sort of happening. And I'm like, I'm a person who like very much processes my feelings through music. So it's like a lot of me just like listening to music that's all about like being really into someone is basically what happens next for me.
I feel like I'm the opposite. I listen to music a lot when I'm, like, feeling in my feels. So, I wasn't, like, listening to, like, love music about Jack and I falling in love, but, like, pre-Jack, it was very much like me listening to, like, Adele sing about, like, her heartbreak when, like, a boy didn't text me back. You know what I mean? Like,
No, I do that too. I mean, I feel
the
like I
opposite
process
drama.
all emotions with music, even if they're like completely not based in reality.
Yeah, yeah. Like, listening to Olivia Rodrigo's album, being like, "Yes, I understand all of this," when I don't.
Where I
I didn't
don't.
go through any of those things as a teenager, so I don't understand it at all, but I like to pretend I do.
Yeah.
Um, but I just think it's interesting talking about love because it's just very different for every person, and you don't really know what to expect, and I feel like I mean, people talk about love all the time, so that's not it, but it's just it's hard to know almost what you're looking for, like, what the signs are of being like, "Oh, that's where I'm at. I am in love. That's what I'm feeling."
Yeah, especially just if you've never felt it or if you're not sure that what you felt before is that, it's kind of like how do you know that for yourself? Like you might know what it other people say it is, but how do you know when you're in love for yourself when you have nothing to sort of base it off of? And I just think for myself it was just how comfortable and safe I felt, how much I wanted to spend time with him all the time, and how I felt like it almost felt weird to not tell him. It was like I was like had to hold it back.
I think for me, it's also almost easier to talk about the like love post falling in love versus like the falling in love part. I don't know what it is. Like I'm not super like lovey-dovey, if that makes sense, which I feel like people might find interesting because I think like in my relationship I am, but for me it's like sometimes hard to talk about those kinds of feelings. It's like very that's like very I don't know, having to talk about that vulnerability a lot. Like I like to play off a lot of things with like humor or being sarcastic. And so then having to actually talk about like what exactly those feelings are, it's almost a little bit more challenging for me because I can't like joke about it or just be like whatever, like because it's very important, but I think harder for me to talk about, which I find really interesting. But I feel like the part of like settling into your relationship love is like where I found my sweet spot a little bit more
Mhm.
because like the honeymoon phase for me is like, whoa, there's like a lot of love and like a lot of emotions and like a lot of yeah. And for me, I've never been a super like touchy feely person, one to like really love talking about my emotions, I guess I could say. I don't know if you would agree with that, but I feel like that's how I am. So like that part was almost a little bit harder for me because it was just so different from what I was used to. Whereas now it's like just feeling so comfortable and like the love that I feel now is so much more I'm trying to think of the right words, like so much more confirmed than like that first
Yeah.
initial love. It's like it
Mhm.
changes all the time and it's so different now from what it was back then when I first said it. It's almost like was that even
Yeah.
real? And it was. Like I did feel it, but it's such a
It
different
just
feeling.
changes. Yeah, I feel
Totally.
like that love in the beginning is real, but it's definitely different. It's, like, so new, and it's very, like, excited and nervous and, like, almost just, like, anticipatory and just, like,
It's almost like I'm a little
this
more chaotic.
it's definitely more chaotic, and it's also just this almost, like, disbelief that you found a person who also loves you. Like, it's just, like, this disbelief that, like, "Oh, wow," like, "How did the 2 of us, like, find each other and then like each other in the same way and we're here at the same time and like this is working out for us like who would have thought like it's just it's very like exciting and new and chaotic and then I feel like what comes after that is like still just as great but it's just different. I feel like it's more solid and also like as time goes on I think you just feel more secure in it but also like I think you become more of like a team. Like in the
Mhm.
beginning, it's just like you're excited, but you're still you and they're still them. And you're just kind of like figuring it out. And then I feel like as time goes on, you become kind of like this unit. And it's like that person is not only just like, oh, this person that I like have a crush on now. It's like they become your partner in things. And I feel like that was something I hadn't thought that much about before I ever fell in love. Like I just was like looking forward to like, oh, the feeling, like someone's gonna care about me. We're gonna do stuff together, we're gonna be in a relationship, like great. But I didn't really know how it would feel after the first, excited butterflies part to be like, oh wow, like this person's kind of like my partner now. Like we're teammates and like we do things together and anything I do now is more fun and better when I have my teammate with me.
Totally. And I think a lot of like shows we watch, movies we see, books we read, it's all about the falling in love part. It's all about like
Yeah,
either
it's
the
like you get your, like,
chase,
happy ever after and then it ends. It's
right?
like
It's
that's
all
where the
about like
story cuts off.
yeah, it's like the chase or the journey or like overcoming all obstacles to like find that love. It's not a lot about like the settling into it and what happens when you're in love for like several months, several years. Like what does that look like? How does that change? And I feel like we could probably even do a whole other episode like really getting into that and like what that
Mhm.
looks like, because also after you've fallen in love, then you have this like love that needs to be nurtured and cared for and like worked for
Yeah.
constantly. It doesn't just stay that way. You have to continue to work at it and keep that. So I feel like we could even get, so deep into that, and just how when you are falling in love, it just sometimes feels like magical and like, you know, this like up and down roller coaster of emotions that you're feeling and all of that. And I mean, it's definitely still wonderful, magical years later, but it's just a lot different in the sense that it's not just like this thing that happens to you. It's
Right,
like
it's
a
a thing
thing
that
that you
you're
work on.
building. Yeah,
Totally.
together, exactly. Yeah, it's like yeah, it doesn't just happen to you. It's like you guys are both making choices that create the life that you want and like constantly communicating about things and figuring out how you want to do things and
Yeah,
figuring out each other and yourselves as you go through life. And that's like another thing too that I hadn't thought a lot about until I was in it, but just like how we as people keep growing throughout life and like are just trying to figure out ourselves, like what we want, how we want to be in the world. And so when you have a partner that you love and that you have for like a while, they like also have to grow with you and like grow together and you just sort of see each other in different phases of themselves, if that makes sense.
totally. And when I think about this too, like this settled into love that comes after so many years, it like also makes me laugh again of like when I was younger and I thought like, oh my God, I just like must love this, boy in my grade that like doesn't speak to me, but like this must be love. And like, first of all, it wasn't, but also there's something so different about like loving someone from a distance, or like thinking that you're in love with someone and then having it be like a reciprocated love.
Right. Right. Like what you were saying about like, do you believe in love at first sight? Like, I don't personally believe in love at first sight. I think that love is just like so deep. And like you're saying, real love is reciprocated and it comes from truly knowing a person and feeling like you're truly known by somebody
Right.
else. And I just don't think that that can happen by just sort of like seeing someone or meeting someone one time. Like, I totally believe in attraction at first sight, but I think that the love part requires that person truly knowing you.
Totally. Like so much of being in love with someone is like you feel that way because of how they care for you and treat you. Not
Mhm.
which like you can't have if necessarily, not to say that people don't love others who don't love them back, but like the really falling in love part, I think there needs to be like another side to that. It can't just be one-sided. And I also don't believe in love at first sight. I mean, I believe in like love, lust at first sight, and um I think you can know how things are going to go with someone faster than you think. Like I remember
Mm.
once Jack and I had a real conversation. I was like, "Oh, like this person is very different from other people I've met or talked to or like been
Yeah.
attracted to, you know?" I think you
Mhm.
can discover that pretty fast. But it's not, I don't think love at first sight is I don't think it's just like possible really. And who knows? Maybe there's someone out there who's like, "No, I fell in love at first sight," and you're wrong. So, if that's the case, tell me I'm wrong. Um, but I think it takes more than that.
Yeah, I
Um,
agree.
and another thing we were talking about is just the idea of soulmates. And I feel like the idea of soulmates has come up a lot recently, just in like pop culture. And
Mhm.
like I really think it's this whole like Megan Fox, MGK, like Kourtney Kardashian, Travis Scott, like
Do a whole
twin
podcast on just
flame
them.
twin flame shit. Like I think it's like top of mind now because they're like these couples that are just like my twin flame, my everything. Like,
I really can't with this twin flame.
and I just the twin flame is like ridiculous. It's so stupid. For me, it's
Uh.
just like an excuse to like allow toxic behavior, because it's like this person that your love is just so fiery. I'm like, no, it's unhealthy. Anyhow, we could talk about that forever. But this idea of soulmates, of like we're all out there looking for the one person that we're meant to like fall in love with and be with for the rest of time, like I don't believe in personally. I think that there are like tons of people that you can go out there and maybe not tons, but like I think there are many people that you could go out and fall in love with. I mean,
Mhm.
there are literally billions of people around the world, most of whom you'll never meet, and, like, you're gonna tell me that none of those people I would ever fall in love with? Like, it just so happens that the person that, like, also speaks the same language is like, my soulmate just also happens to speak the same language and, like, it's in the same country and, like, all that, I think it's, like, based on the people that you have in your life and in your circle or, um
Yeah.
so I think also too, I think that real love, like we said, is like worked for and almost earned by the way that you and your partner treat each other. And I almost think that saying someone is your soulmate kind of once like takes away from that, all the work that you have to do to be with someone
Mhm.
forever.
Right, like, you'll just find this person and they will come as is, perfect, like, ready to go for the
Right.
rest of the
And
time.
also, once again, can be an excuse for bad behavior and not being treated well. It's like, oh, well, he's my soulmate. It's like, not if he's treating you like shit, he's not. Like, he is not your soulmate. Like, go find someone who treats you well. I just think
Yeah.
things like that are yeah. It's like a nice idea,
I
right?
think I think that soulmates are not found, but made, and I think,
Mm.
like, you can just you know, there's lots of people out there, and like you're saying, you could fall in love with lots of different people, and I think a person is your, like, quote, "soulmate" when you both love each other and, like, commit to that and commit to growing together and commit to, like, communicating well and making your relationship work and putting in that work that you're talking about, and I feel like you could love a person, they could love you, but if one person doesn't treat the other well or one person isn't really willing to put in the work or grow, it's like, yeah, I mean, even if you love them or they love you, like if you're not willing to do those things, like that's not going to work out. That's not going to
Yeah,
sustain something like that. And I think I don't know if I truly believe it's like quote soulmates, but I do think that you can find a person and you can both just decide to put in the work, decide that like your relationship is important enough that you'll just always figure it out, always communicate, always, um, keep keep striving for it. And I feel like that's kind of my concept of a soulmate, like a person who's like
totally.
willing to put it in the work with you.
I feel like what I don't like about the idea of soulmates is that once again, it's like all like up to chance.
Yeah,
Like it
yeah, yeah,
just,
yeah,
oh, you just like run into each other and it's like, oh yes, soulmates.
yeah.
It's like
Right.
in Twilight with like the imprinting or whatever. It's like,
Yeah.
we lock eyes and we're in love forever. And I'm like, no, like Jacob didn't fall in love with a baby. He has problems. Um it's
You
not
know,
him.
in related to Taylor Swift news, Taylor Lautner got engaged this past weekend. So Taylors are doing things left, right, and center.
Yeah, it's a big weekend for Taylor's. But yeah, I just don't like this idea that it'll just happen to you or like, oh, everyone has a person out there
Right. You
that's
just have to
just
like
gonna
fund this
find
one.
them. It's like, no, I think like a lot of people also too like put in a lot of work to find someone to be with, whether it's like being on the apps and like dating a lot to find the person that they connect with or working really hard at the relationship that they're already in. Like, love is a lot of work no matter what stage of it you're in, even if it's just like the still trying to find someone to fall in love with or the act of falling in love or being in love for many years and continuing to work on it. None of it is easy. So I think the idea of soulmates to me sometimes I like what you were saying about how they're not like they're made because for me the idea of like oh it'll just happen to you is not fair, I
Yeah, I
guess.
just don't think it's realistic, and I don't think it's just, like, setting yourself up for, like, frustration because I feel like if you think that you'll just find your soulmate and that person will kind of come, like, perfectly packaged, like, made for you, like, totally understand you at all times, like, not do anything that will irritate or offend
Right,
you, like, it's just, like, that's never gonna happen, and I feel like what will happen is you'll just keep finding people and, like, find a flaw with them and be like, "Well, they're not the one because look, they have this issue," and it's like,
right.
well, rather than just finding something wrong with everyone, like, that's bound to happen. It's more so just, can you work through those things? Can you communicate well? Can you, like, show each other love even when you're frustrated? Can you, like, grow together?
I completely agree. So thanks so much for listening to all of our thoughts about falling in love, love at first sight, soulmates, settling into love, all that jazz. We would love to hear your experience with love, good and bad, and what your thoughts are on love at first sight or soulmates. Do you believe in them? Do you not believe in them? Do you think Rebecca and I are totally wrong? Let us know. Um, as a quick PSA, we actually will not be having an episode next week. I'm having a quick little procedure being done. Getting my sinuses fixed. If you have any questions about that, DM us on Instagram at sisterlypod for the tea on my nose. I'm not getting a nose job. That would be kind of nice though. Just not like a full one, just like a
You
little like
really do not need a nose job.
just a little shaving down here, a little shaping over yonder, but no. None lots of stuff to get the surgery, but don't necessarily get the visual rewards. But that's okay. So we won't be here next week, but we will be here the following week. We hope everyone has a lovely Thanksgiving if that's something you celebrate. If not, I hope you just enjoy a couple of days off from work. But yeah, make sure to follow us at Sisterly Pod on Instagram, chat with us there, or email us at sisterly.contact@gmail.com. And we will see you in 2 weeks for the next episode of Sisterly. Thanks, guys.